What would you say is the biggest misconception of your job? You mentioned a lot of different ones, but more specifically teaching. What would you say is the biggest misconception of your job?
That anybody can do it.
Mm,
We've seen a lot of states make some very interesting decisions in the midst of a teacher shortage. Um, like you don't have to go to college to be a teacher. I'm like, all the work we do. If we're training young minds, and you don't have to pursue upper education. Upper education, like literally, one, you have to love education, and two, you have to love kids to be a teacher, at least to be an effective one. And if you're not a teacher, like people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. If you're not an effective teacher where kids can connect to, like you're gonna be fighting kids your whole school year. Um, and so yeah, I feel like teaching is a high calling, and not anybody can do it. There are definitely
mm,
prerequisites.
absolutely. Welcome to another edition of the Imagine Exposure Vodcast. We have someone who uh, her reputation precedes her. She is a phenomenal woman who's been able to build some incredible relationships, but has discovered a passion with education. And what I want to do is, of course, with all of our guests, we want to shine the spotlight on them, but to focus and hone in on her specific role with education. So I want to welcome you to the podcast. How you doing, Tyshan?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well, doing well. I try to ask each guest, when we first begin, just from you, how would you define yourself? Who are you, and how would you define
I guess I would define myself as, I guess, a believer. I'm the oldest of three children. Uh, Educator, mentor, sister, daughter, uh, friend. Yeah.
yourself? Awesome. The next question, actually, I don't know if you remember this. So I had an opportunity to serve with Tyshan. This was a uh, summer missions in Haiti, and I think you asked me or you asked the group this question, and it's the question of what is your story. The reason why I love this question so much is because it's specific, but it's also general. People can edit it to fit your, however you want to communicate it. So I'm posing the question back to you. What is your story as it pertains to work and vocation?
You got that from me? That's funny. Because I love people's story. So my story, um, I grew up in a single parent home. And being the oldest, I took on a role of like a lot of responsibility. Um, and I was like, I am a very like by the book kind of person. And when I was in high school, my grandmother got sick with cancer, and all my mom's siblings, moved into the same house to take care of her. So I was living with my cousins. At one point, it was 14 of us in the house, but it was good
Wow, I
times
didn't know
because,
that.
yeah, but it was, now my family's very close because of it.
Sure.
Um, yeah. But through that process, the Lord pursued my heart, and I became a believer. And I just had a passion to like really want to serve God and know God. And so when I got to college, I got super involved in college ministry, um, met a lot of people, and apparently impacted a lot of people. Um, um, but yeah, I have a huge heart for serving, and so I did a lot of that in college. And after I came on staff with Impact right out of college. In those 2.5 years I was with Impact, just grew my heart even more for wanting to invest in people's lives. And so I left Impact thinking I was going to come back. And the Lord had me working at a jail for 5 years. And I just really got to see uh, that like the system really takes advantage of people who are poor and uneducated. And I was like, I want to be a part of fixing this problem because it's like literally some people, if they just had better opportunities, they would. This is not the life that they'd be living. So I became a teacher at a low income school. Um, and I mean, I've had kids go to jail and still make poor decisions, but I know, like, I had a student message me last night, actually on Instagram, out of nowhere, and just shared with me. He's in 10th grade now, and I taught him when he was in sixth. And he just shared with me, like, how he got taken advantage of in a relationship. Um, but the way he messaged me was like, uh, when I'm going through hard times, I remember the hardest thing about being in your class was trying to finish my exit ticket before I left.
Mm.
Um, but I missed those days, but I'm glad I had a teacher who was there to support me. And when I think about support from a teacher, I think of you.
Oh wow. Okay. So
Yeah,
please finish.
it was really sweet. Yeah.
Well, what I was saying was that there's so many different layers from what you said, like even like the school to prison pipeline and how being in prison made you go, yo, like let me go back to school so I can help the process for the next group. Understanding that you left that indelible mark that 4 years later, students are, reaching out and wanting to talk. I mean, I got a chance to teach in middle school. I don't think me my students. Well, I mean, you never know what impact you
Yeah.
leave on students. You just never know, but I also caught from that you're tough because you had to exit because he still remembers it. So that's really cool. But I think the tough teachers are the ones who care. So that's awesome. um,
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part. I'm not tough enough.
oh
I'm
well,
I'm so focused on trying to build with these kids because I don't. Who has time to be? I mean, I could be structured all day, but that kind of sucks the joy out of everything.
sure, it's balanced. It's definitely balanced, but I think you have to have kind of both sides, and I think they appreciate both sides. Um,
Absolutely.
what would you say is the biggest misconception of your job? You mentioned a lot of different ones, but more specifically teaching. What would you say is the biggest misconception of your job?
That anybody can do it.
Mm,
And we've seen a lot of states make some very interesting decisions in the midst of a teacher shortage. Um, like you don't have to go to college to be a teacher. I'm like, all the work we do. If we're training young minds, and you don't have to pursue upper education. Upper education, like literally, one, you have to love education, and two, you have to love kids to be a teacher, at least to be an effective one. And if you're not a teacher, like people don't care how much you know till they know how much you care. If you're not an effective teacher where kids can connect to, like you're gonna be fighting kids your whole school year. Um, and so, yeah, I feel like teaching is a high calling, and not anybody can do it. There are definitely
mm,
prerequisites.
sure. I tried my hand at teaching. I couldn't do the politics of it. Like school is great, kids, but the politics I'm just not good. There's just a lot in there that I'm just not good at that. That's
People
awesome.
talk about the politics, and I don't even know what they mean by that.
For me, it's like you have a great administration. I don't want to be careful what I say, but like if you have a great administration, they're going to support the teacher when the teacher makes a tough decision. But there are some places that are like, this kid's popular, or I'm related to this kid, or whatever. And it's like, all the things you set up in your classroom, we're not going to stand by you. We're pretty much going to side with the kid, you know what I mean? In a way that isn't necessarily tied to care or education. It's just more like almost like a quid pro quo style relationship. And so I think that's part of, what I meant. But like me, I think that happens, in a lot of different, I've heard a lot of it. Um, who would you say is excuse me, who are some people in your vocational story in which you are most
Okay, so there is a lady, Miss Gina. She was watching my nephew, um, and she was a third grade teacher, but she was retired, and the kids that she had, who were like 5 and under, them kids, they read, they wrote, they did math problems. She was like a beast. She's actually the reason why I became got a teaching position, because I was looking for a job, having a hard time. And one of the ladies who dropped off her kids to her worked at a charter school in town, and so she
Mm-hmm.
put my application through so I could get picked up as a teacher. Um, but I look up to Miss Gina because like she knew the value of education, and even in her with her being retired and just babysitting out of her house, she was like, "These kids gonna learn, and they're gonna be smart."
Wow. That's great. Right. Anyone else? Well, that's the primary.
Oh yeah, that's a primary. I don't think anybody else, like when it comes to like teaching per se.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. How would you say your childhood passions when you were a kid prepare you for your adult career choice?
Um, I think my second year of teaching, I had this big aha moment. Like everything just kind of came together for teaching. So like, um, I have a passion for like investing in people, and so I get to invest in kids. In high school, I was on the debate team, and it taught me how to public speak. I was a really good extemporaneous speaker, and I feel like with teaching, you're constantly speaking extemporaneously on the fly. Um, Little 10-minute pockets of good knowledge to keep kids going. Uh, and I think just being like the oldest, you're just a natural leader. And so I felt like I was trained on how to lead a classroom because I felt like I was a leader at home.
Awesome. Um, how would you explain what you do as a professional in a sentence? Then, how would you explain what you do as a professional in one word?
Sorry, can you hear? The
Okay.
computer kind of, yeah.
Sorry. This particular question is about the economy of words, and so trying to boil down all that you do in short snippet. You talked about 10-minute snippet, but how would you explain what you do as a professional in one sentence? Then, how would you explain what you do as a professional in one word?
Okay, one sentence. I invest in young minds, and one word, teach.
Awesome. All right. What would you say? What is it that you love the most about your job?
I love the most about my job uh, that I get to, well, it used to be when I was at my Title I school, like I felt like my what I'm doing had huge impact on a kid's life and their trajectory and their family. And so I used to love that. Now I'm at a fine arts academy where all my kids come from two-parent home, and if I call home, they call me back mom and dad. If I email home, they
Mm,
email mom and dad. Um,
hmm.
and so now I just enjoy incorporating the arts into everything I do in education. So I'm a science teacher. Um, I integrate with the art teacher, and so everything we do has an art piece. And so it's challenging and it's fun. And I'm watching kids learn in a new and creative way.
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal. That parental support is so important. On the other end of the spectrum, what would you say is the biggest challenge in your work?
When you're at a good school, the biggest challenge is staying on top of everything. Um, so like making sure you get everything in on time, making sure that like, and making sure that you're connecting with every kid in some kind of way.
Hmm.
Um, when you're at a rough school, the hardest part is surviving the admin, because I feel like admin makes
Mm.
schools hard. Um, like there's that phrase out there: nobody ever leaves the job. People leave the bosses, and that I could say that's 100% true for education.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right. So what steps would you say a person must accomplish either to become certified or respected in this?
So you should definitely go to college. You don't have to go to college for teaching. You can get an alternative certification. And so it's very important that you find a good alternative certification program. I happened to stumble up on one that was pretty good. But you go through the certification program, you get, I feel like it's very, very important to have a mentor teacher your first year, someone
Mhm.
who can coach you and give you feedback, and also show you the laws of the land in terms of like, hey, they might say focus on content, but focus on classroom management and culture because that's really what's going to carry you through your first year. Um, and then like, uh, YouTube is endless. I highly recommend just picking the brains of other teachers, watching content on YouTube, or joining a subscription like Skillshare, so you can broaden your skills and your range.
Um, how does a person in your profession, how in the genesis of this question, specifically when we're talking about communities of color, a lot of times we don't have real conversations around salary, around negotiation. Part of the reason why I wanted to create Grace to Cultivate is to talk about some of the work related things that don't often get communicated within our communities. So especially when we talk about a certain sense of being kind of left out of different vocational roles, just for everything from slavery to Jim Crow, et cetera. And so my question to you is, how does a person either negotiate salary or the value of their service in this career choice?
Well, our salaries is salaries pretty set based on the number of years you taught, but you can add stuff. And so I think anybody should like keep a record of what you've been doing so that you can compete to become a coach. I've been a first year coach. I've been district team lead for sixth grade science content. I've been science fair coordinator. I've been science team lead for my current school and my past schools. And so there's a lot of ways you can add things that don't require a lot of extra. Um, to your base salary to help you grow and expand. And I think it's very important just to keep a record of what you've done and things you've done implemented in your class because it makes you a more viable candidate. Outside of that, you could just switch districts, but even within switching districts, like it's good to come with like a portfolio of things you've accomplished.
Right. Um, this is the time machine question. Based on what you know now about your vocation, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back on the first day of the job and give yourself advice? What advice?
Focus on culture.
Mm,
My classroom management was horrendous my first year.
uh,
And so I wish I would have really like focused on setting expectations and making sure kids met those expectations every single time.
great advice. um, how do you prepare to one day transition from this role?
I've thought about it. I have not prepared at all because I really love it. Um, so if I was to transition, I'd probably still stay in education and probably move up to like a coaching position and
Okay.
working with adults, which is why I like to. The way I prepare for that is making sure I keep a good portfolio of things I've done, creative lessons I've made, and just good overall teaching practice. I read a lot of books and articles on like best practices for the classroom and try to implement it.
Well, um, this is called our Cultivate Countdown. These last two questions are the ones that we put on the memes, that sort of thing, and put it out there. Um, what would you say are kind of the essential principles to your job, like 3 steps, 5 steps? And I know you can't boil teaching down into a few steps, but what would you say are some of the things you kind of go into work with every day? What are your essentials as it pertains to how you are?
Okay. Central principles. 1, pray before you go to work. Just asking the Lord for guidance and wisdom, the Holy Spirit to give you the words and the patience.
Absolutely.
Uh, 2, be intentional about connecting with your students and their parents. Parents love hearing from teachers, especially when it's good things. And parents love it when they know that the teacher is invested in their child. Like I had a meeting yesterday, and for a 504, and the parent was sharing these things about her child, and I had already picked up on some things, and so I was able to share, like, your child is really smart. I think he should be in advance. This is what I've noticed. This is what I'm doing to see if he's ready for advance, like that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing, build good relationships with your coworkers. Um, that's your team. It's so important to have a team as a teacher, and y'all are teaching the same kids, and so having those conversations about children, about content, yeah, those are like my 3 steps.
Awesome. One motivational quote. Had to give your original quote, your Brodenism, if you will. What would you say is that one motivational quote that
As the psalmist Tripoli said, I'm nothing
you
special,
have?
just well, service makes me happy. I live by that.
Could you say
I'm
that
nothing.
one more time? Could you say that one time? I think I was laughing over it. Okay, I heard it. Oh, what'd you say?
I said, I'm nothing special, just a vessel. Service makes me happy.
Awesome. Awesome. Any other final thoughts? And how would you want to be, like, when I put the content out? I was gonna put it as the educator, but if you can just kind of wrap it up in terms of your final thoughts, how would you want to be? How would you want it to be communicated in terms of your position?
Oh, you can. I'm fine with being an educator. That's what I
Educator. Okay.
am.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's what I do. Final thoughts. Education is a high calling, and I feel like everyone should have a piece of it. So if you're a parent, investing in your child's education, knowing what's going on. If you're a kid or a teenager, like tutoring or being present for your siblings. Um, if you're just a regular adult, uh, having finding out what's going on campuses or mentoring younger high school students will go a long way.
Awesome. Awesome. And would you like for anyone to follow up with you, or in case they had any questions about being an educator, would you want them to try to reach out?
Sure, they can.
Okay.
Uh,
Like email address.
yeah, they can reach me at styshan@aol.com. I know I'm old.
Awesome.
I just never got rid of
It's
it.
all good. It's all good.
Or
It's all good.
social media on Instagram and Twitter. I'm Tyshan B, so Tyshan B.
Awesome. Well, Tyshan, I thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, your expertise. Thank you for doing the show. Thank
Oh yeah, thank you for the invite.
you. Well, you have a great day.
You too. Bye.